So it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce Mauro Martino. So Mauro is an Italian artist, designer, and researcher who is renowned for his pioneering work on integrating art, data, and artificial intelligence. As the founder of the IBM Research Visual AI Lab and professor of practice at Northeastern, he has significantly influenced the fields of AI art and data visualization. And his more recent work at the intersection of AI, his more recent work.
So really nice to meet you. Thank you for the invitation. Usually I walk around with my remote control, but because it's a remote connection too, I stay in front to the camera, so everybody can in some way talk with me. This is like not really a scientific approach to the topics, but more artistic. And I'll tell you what is my experience in working with data and AI model, and in some way try to define the difference between these transitions. So I was working on with the data visualization starting from 2008, and I think many of my work are maybe familiar with you, but maybe you don't know. But let's see. And then I move on to 2012 to the generative AI field. Okay, at that time was not really generative, but it was really the beginning. So I will try to divide this presentation into steps. So one really to understand what are really the reason why we use so intensely data visualization to understand our world, and then why we move to this new form of aesthetic generativism. So let's see the difference. Fundamentally, of course, generativism is based to unstructured data and synthetic data, and dataism is a kind of you can see I use this word like a form of religion. No, is like a in a way that really inspire artists to identify a new type of aesthetic. So the core of my talk is really about what type of aesthetic emerge when you use religion number one, dataism, and religion number two, generativism. In a dataism philosophy or religion, everything is about data. So our planet is just a vision of how many people we are, how many information of the people are producing every millisecond, and so it's just a flow of information. And this idea is really powerful and push many people around the world to believe that data is a form of oil. So you can really create a business with data. And I think we talk about the past by talking about dataism, but it's still important to remember that period that is still with us. Of course, we don't really move far away. We just introduce a new type of technology. But this power of data, this try to understand everything with monitoring the data analytics, and I think you build a lot of interface by using data analytics to really make interpretation of the world and push people to make a decision. So I want to just summarize all my work in the data age of my work with one project. I just pick one that I think really represents very well the spirit of that age. So there is audio, just 4-minute video, so we can watch all together. And I think the meaning of this sharing is just to have a starting point. The data is starting point in terms of aesthetic, and then move beyond and see what happens when you start to play with a generative model. So let's enjoy all together this video.
This is nature's publication record. 150 years of interconnected research, represented by the majority of nature's papers. A snapshot of the ever-growing web of collaboration and discovery that is science. Each dot is a paper. The colour represents the field, yellow for earth and space science, green for physics, and so on. two papers are connected if a third references them both. Using these simple rules, scientists built the network paper by paper. Let's start from the beginning, 1869. These are the early days of science publishing. Back then, papers didn't exist as they do today. Rather, they took the form of correspondence, popping up sporadically. But over time, things change. They start to cluster together into disciplines. Communities emerge. In 1976, the discovery of high-temperature superconductors leads to a blossoming of similar papers in nature, shown here in green. It was a field which would continue to grow throughout the 20th and 21st centuries. Back to the late 1930s now, the two world wars lead to an increase in nuclear physics research as nations raced to split the atom. And this too was reflected in Nature's publication record as nuclear physics papers cluster together in the late 30s and early 40s. And that's a paper putting forward a concept in genetics called canalization. It was published in 1942, but remained largely uncited for decades. That is until the late 90s, when new discoveries led to it finding new relevance. Each paper takes its place in this network of nature, but that's just the beginning. Every discovery is built on the work which precedes it, and then in turn forms the foundations of the discoveries of the future. And we can see that too. Let's take Watson and Crick's seminal paper on the structure of DNA as an example. Here it is. Below it is every paper that it referenced, not just Nature papers, every paper. Then every paper that those papers referenced, and so on. Above it is all the papers that built their work based on Watson and Crick's discovery. At the centre are the most highly cited papers, orbited by those with fewer connections. By looking from either end, we can see the fields cluster together. Let's look at the papers referenced by Watson and Crick. As well as biomedical science, there are contributions from other fields. Chemistry and physics feed into the discovery of the double helix. After publication, the picture looks somewhat different. The structure of DNA formed a springboard for engineering and technology research. There are clusters of mathematics papers, even studies from the humanities and social sciences. Every paper has its own story, its own unique network, and each of those networks connects to others to form a whole. Every paper in every field playing their part in the global process of research and discovery. Over 150 years, nature too has played its own small part, contributing its publication record to the great interconnected network of science.
Well, I hope some of you cry, maybe. But the peak of this data visualization was this effort to connect human being with his emotion to the data. To create a storytelling that can push not just to remember the information, but be attached with your emotion to the information itself. And this was a peak. So nothing happened after that, because I don't think you can do more than that. So make people cry in front of a database video is challenging. And this was, of course, not my last work. I did many other work, but it was very representative of a period of my life, and in some way, all the evolution of database. Of course, was published with Nature. You can still find 150 years of Nature. It was a way to celebrate 150 years of Nature journal. Now, this is an aesthetic that, of course, is very important and it still influence us. And in a data is we really believe that data are fundamental, And we need to understand how to analyze, constantly increase our algorithm to extract information from this from the data, and essentially understand the structure of our society, like in the video before, understand the structure of science with the causation network. And the final point is really push us to make a decision, to make the right decision, and in some way to win in this game that is really competitive against our competitor. In some way, sometimes to win against our destructive spirit that demolish all the infrastructure of our planet, the nature infrastructure of our planet. So I think there are some key features that I try to summarize very quickly about how data views evolve and what are the type of components that are really important. I think in some way is a 5-point to summarize the aesthetic that we saw together with 150 years of nature. Then the generativism. So, and of course, the core of this presentation is about me working with the generative model and this collaboration with generative model. So generative is, of course, start with this question. In sense, it's a new philosophy, and of course, because it's a kind of religion of philosophy, push in the stream the problem. So essentially, there is this report from Europol, and they say that probably all the data in the future will be, almost all the data by 2026 will be synthetic. So what is the meaning, and how this will change our way to analyze culture, way to understand ourselves? So I think it's a very important key point. Of course, after the European Union agency, many other reports come out, and today all the companies around the world are crazily use an incredible amount of resource to download everything is possible from the web, because they feel this is last year where they can really, without spend too much money and recognize what is fake, what is real, collect real human data. So I wrote a few months ago a chapter in this book that is really dedicated to people that have the responsibility to make a curatorial effort for the museum to introduce digital art in museum. So it's really dedicated for a very little niche of work activity in the area of art. So of course, in art, digital art today become more and more important. And so there are many questions that I try to open with this book. So the new aesthetic, of course, and the fact that everything become maybe no original, maybe a copy of a copy is 2 points. And then, of course, how this narrative will change about culture. So essentially, it's no more about what we produce, but in what way we use AI engine to produce new content. And these in some way introduce a new form of democratization. So when you think about culture, you need to feel connect with not just traditional art, but with movie, with many form of expression. And if you are able to build your movie from yourself in your room, probably you can create a new type of genre, a new type of niche type of movie that maybe attract some people in your little town. So essentially, there's this prediction of this form of long tail. The same that we saw at the beginning of internet. So it was a long tail. Everybody was able to identify some subculture where they feel connect. In some way, now we are able to produce the content that in some way satisfies the need from some particular audience. So a movie will become something not just easy to build, but maybe in terms of economic sense, it will be very cheap to produce a movie, but you can choose your actor, you can choose. So all the considerations that maybe you're familiar with. So we're really connected with this algorithm culture. So the algorithms now are type of artists that emerged many years ago. So there's nothing new in this area. But of course, now the principle of algorithms become more invasive and start to enter really deeply in our society. And of course, with many ethical and social implications. in terms of the right to use the movie around the world to create a new type of fake synthetic movie, the right to use all the paint around the world to create a new type of, and these are part of a responsibility in the field that I have every time I'm building a new artistic project. So you will see one of my many of my art projects come from a data collection that's made by me and other collaborators, just because it's very important to understand that we are doing something wrong today by using all this data without give any credit to all the authors. So really it's something ethically the level of, I think, of course, we can say we need to see the progress. We need to advance this model, but the cost is to use for free effort, year of effort for many human beings. And this probably is a big ethical problem. So generativism, I want to really try to give you some feeling in terms of what is my sense of what is my mood when I work with in a co-creation with a model. First, I want to highlight that maybe the concept of co-creation is maybe not really the right concept. It's more a legal concept in the sense that I use data that come from other people. I don't pay these people. I don't give credit to these people. Then it's my time to use a word from generative AI. I want my credit. So I start to say, you know, it's not really true that you click a button, write a prompt, and generate art. I was try multiple things, then I introduce some of my aesthetic sense. At the end, I build something that is just in co-creation. So it's a way to clean your responsibility, it's a way to clean the legal contract with someone that asks you to build. Because you know, probably you know that nothing that comes from generative model can be sell, because there is no credit you can attribute to an AI engine. The copyright is just human copyright, cannot be a copyright that comes from an algorithm. So the term co-creation is a way to avoid this little problem. So I co-create because I want to be paid for my work that I build in 5 minutes with a generative model. This is the situation today. So it's a kind of tricky and complicated. Anyway, let's try to be focused in some of the positive aspect of this new type of philosophy, new type of approach. So obviously, everything is in between reality and synthetic experience. And sometimes you cannot really understand the boundaries between what is true, what is untrue. And I try to present a recent experiment that just was, the opening was just yesterday, no, 2 days ago. And in the most important digital art museum that we have in Italy, in Milan. So this project is very simple. So essentially, try to create a connection with the audience. You are in front of this video camera, and then the video camera is recording you and your voice, and then it try to duplicate you, create the digital twins. But instead to see just your face and your body, you see your face start to talk and your body start to talk in a different way and say a new type of things, new type of idea. So and then the story is very simple. This exhibition is dedicated to aging and how to avoid to look older, to look too old. And then my provocative
Lies den
message
folgenden
is one.
Text laut vor. Du stehst vor der Installation Die Unsterblichkeit des Gedankens, eine künstlerische Reise, die die Tiefe des menschlichen Intellekts und seine Fähigkeit. Das Zeichen des unreifen Mannes ist, dass er edel für eine Sache sterben möchte, während das Zeichen des reifen Mannes ist, dass er bescheiden für eine leben möchte. Du kannst nicht immer in zwei geteilt sein. O Sinstav des Du musst viele Jahre lang einer und ganz sein. Du hast so viel zu genießen und zu sein und zu tun. Sein oder nicht sein, das ist hier die Frage, ob's edler im Gemüt, die Pfeile und Schleudern des wütenden Geschicks zu ertragen, oder sich waffnend gegen eine See von Plagen durch Widerstand sie enden.
So the concept is this experiment made at home before to send the application to the museum. The concept is you're talking and then you see yourself become older and talk and maintain this very fresh idea, this very fresh, you still talk about poetry and philosophy, and then you become older and older and then you disappear because you died, and then it's, the words are still there in this darkness. And the meaning is, okay, maybe the secret to become eternal is not just in technology, but in our effort during our life to write and do great things that people can remember after we died. So, of course, this was the concept. And then the reality was very different because in the museum everything happened. So this is it's a short example.
Affrontiamolo. Le nostre vite sono miserabili, laboriose e brevi. Siamo diventato giusto tanto cibo quanto basta per mantenere il respiro nei nostri corpi. E coloro a noi che ne sono capaci sono costretti a lavorare fino all'ultimo atomo della nostra
So I think the
prawdziwa kąpiel młodości.
there is some sequence of experiment I can show you from the museum. And of course, everything becomes difficult. So this is a typical situation of an artist to make a proposal. They try to create this confusion, what is real, what is unreal. Obviously, the quality can be better. But when you're in the museum, then the light becomes very strange. And of course, the telecamera become an allocation is very unusual. And of course, the system is still working, try to map the face, they become older and older to the person and move with the person. But sometimes there is a sound around. So in this case, there was a lot of other video installation in this room. So it become very hard for the system to really capture your voice and replicate your voice. But the concept was interesting. I think is one of the type of art experiment you can see today in a museum. Probably not so frequently because they're still hard to build. But they are very will become more common and common. So, and this is really what is this using your artistic technological skill to build a new type of experience that can push people to understand what is this new direction of generativism. Essentially, the key point is really to destroy these boundaries between what is real, what is not. Now, I try to identify some key feature of this generative model approach to art. So obviously, these models are able to create unique artifacts, like the one that you see before. It's nothing that exists before in art. Like the concept you see before is really unique. There's nothing like that in art history before. So, and probably it's the first one of this kind. I'm really well connected with all this AI art movement. I'm part of this movement. So I really try to release every time something before other people. And it's kind of a technological challenge, a skill challenge, but still I have to create a form of poetry with the technology, create some engagement with the user. And so you can build really unique artifacts. Then there is in some way a problem that is when you're using a generative model, usually people always try to identify some trend in the media. So I was analyzing almost 300 million prompts and try to understand what is really the trend today in this new type of let's say market, this new ecosystem. So essentially, when we talk about architectural style, everybody go to the direction of video game and art movement, of course, photorealism, one or hyperrealism, one of obsession, because really people want to try to build a form of fake reality. This is really one of the intentions. And the artist, this is a big surprise. So of course, it's not a surprise architectural style and profession because we know there's this tendency to match the aesthetic of video game. But in artist field, really artist that was outside the range of video game art become very important. Of course, it's very hard to identify artists that we know. So many of you know Greg Rutkowski. How many of you know Greg? 2 person is, and you know Greg before the prompt? No, You discover him thanks to the prompt revolution. So Greg Rutowski is this guy. So he's always drawing dragon and elf and something like that. Then Stanley, art gem. You know Stanley too, no? Because if you of course, he's a why you know Greg? You don't know Stanley. Since usually he's the same. The other guy, one. Stanley is another guy that usually is like a Marvel artist. No, he build all these Superwoman, Superman, and you can see the static that become the emerging from this generative movement is really different from the static we feel is art. So and Frank Franzetta, honestly, I'm really in love with him, and then it finally become very popular around the world. Maybe it's not really popular in terms of name, but you can see this aesthetic emerge in all output from AI art. Then there is this type of new aesthetic. So people really try to build a planet that doesn't exist or scenario that are really new. So the effort is really to push the limit of this generative model to create a new type of not just artifact, but a new type of aesthetic too. Then there is this tendency to mix different elements. So different type of era, different type of culture, different type of style. And this is an example of this trend. So essentially it's myself, my portrait, but with aesthetic of Alice Neal, or my portrait with aesthetic of Edward Munch, and so on. So I feel when you're watching my portrait, I'm here in front of you with the same type of mustache. So I think I use this example because it's a bit more powerful with myself. Yeah, this is me with Vermeer touch. But the point is, you don't just see myself, you see the artist. You know he's fake. You know he's fake. You know he's not really Freud that's painting me. You know it's Marc Chagall that's painting me. I never have the opportunity to meet Chagall, but he's painting me, and he can paint you too. But what we discover is by play with the style, with the art history, it's not just a game. It's a way to push ourselves to really understand deeply what are the signature, the element, the color palette, the style of brush that really make Marc Chagall. So I think, and we can use this technology just to increase our attention to some phenomena. And Paul Klee, of course, is very abstract, and I'm using him because like the stream of the representation of reality to make a movie too. So this is a movie that the movie that I present to you come from another art project. It was presented in here in the United States, and it's about the very famous book Exercise in Style, or Ramon Queneau. Do you know this book? Okay, if you don't know this book, it's time to take a picture, go to Amazon, and buy this book, because it's one of the most incredible, beautiful work of literature that humankind was able to write. The concept was very simple. Talk about the same story 99 times. So each page is again the same story, but is writing a different way. So it's really a challenge for the artist to use words to express the same meaning, but with different type of aesthetic. Now, usually in story, the story is important, but in this book, the aesthetic become the deep part of the message. So, of course, I was thinking this is a great book to use to really push people to think about the power of generative, because generative is based to the surface of this. You don't really understand the system, the story. There is nothing more than statistics, so you don't have any perception of the story, but you can understand the static. So every single word. And if I don't do nothing, I just replace every single word to the system, and I'm prompting again. Can I have a different type of movie? Now, I just show one movie that comes from this book related to the aesthetic of Paul Klee. Of course, you have to identify some way to express this story, and let's watch together. It's just 1 minute.
Comédie. Acte premier, scène 1. Sur la plateforme arrière d'un autobus S, un jour vers midi. Le receveur. La monnaie, s'il vous plaît. Des voyageurs lui passent la monnaie. Scène 2. L'autobus s'arrête. Le receveur. Laissons descendre, priorité. Une priorité, c'est complet, drelin, drelin, drelin. Acte second, scène 1. Même décor.
Well, this is too long to watch all the story, but the collection is in a website where you can see all the movie. So I think this part is very clear, and you can really reach any type of aesthetic, not just hyperrealism. And then we have this ability to maybe surpassing human capability to create artifact, to create aesthetic. And people that are in generative philosophy, they really believe on that. And of course, every time you identify topics, you can really play and play again with the same prompt, investigate any possible variation, and this become like the main way to work with the system. So this is really a type of a co-working activity. So identify some topics with a prompt, and then there is this infinite variation of the same prompt because you can change the seed and so on. This is really the real state of art of the daily work activity of AI artists today. Try again and try again. Looks very boring, but it's really what's going on. I use a different technique. Usually I build a model that is trying to identify for me what I love and what I don't love. So I build 1 million variation for the same prompt, and the model identify for me what probably I like it. And then from 1 million, I have a 100 select picture from the model, and then I pick what I really love. But to identify every single frame from my work, this is the philosophy is the same. The co-working experience is the most boring co-working experience you can think about. I never see something so boring like to interact with the AI model with prompting. So at the end of the story, yeah, it's a nightmare. So I try all my to do everything I can to avoid this selection. I try to identify a model that can really pick the best for me, but it's very hard. It's very hard at the end. You can just create a filter of the output from the model, but you need to put something of yourself, of your time, to really pick the best prompt. And then error. This makes the system a little bit, the co-working activity with the model a little bit more complicated, because sometimes it's not really just about the static that you feel is important for you. Sometimes it's to be close to that aesthetic and just stop a few minutes before. Like when you're working with GAN, the idea in GAN, you have this opportunity to see the evolution of the model. With diffusion, you cannot, unfortunately. But everything changed between people that, so people that play with art and AI with GAN are different compared to people that play with AI art with diffusion, with a transformer. So you can see the system evolve, the pixelation disappear, and in this effort to have some form of art that the mimic the Renaissance portrait to aesthetic, then at some point you stop the system. You stop the system before the model is really matched the training data. Now, of course, I can just pick very few work because we don't have too much time, but this is an overview of work I really love that I built during the last year. I pick one for every year. So, and Form Affluence probably was my last work in the age of dataism. And then I moved in 2018 to work that become very popular, very important around the museum and gallery in a generativism. So I will try to quickly highlight Sterling City, because I think it's very important in this cooperation between AI and model. So in Sterling City, the most important part of this project is the collection of the data. This was exhibited in 2020 in a Biennale of Venice. So don't forget the age. So it was before many technology was available for everybody. It was, this technology was really built inside to my lab. So you have this, was built in collaboration with Politecnico di Milano. So all the students from all around the world, Politecnico likely have a student that come from all around the world, they start to travel around Europe, but we discovered it was really too expensive to support all these student travel. At the end, we decided to just move around Italy, unfortunately. And you can see this device on the top. So if you want to collect from yourself data, you cannot ask a friend and yourself to go around with the camera. It's impossible to collect enough data to really make some imprinting, some different in a generative model. So this system is a link to your mobile phone, give you the information about where you have to go, and constantly take picture for you. Now, this is very important to understand. You need a mobile phone. Otherwise, you will go again on the same street and collect 2 times picture from the same street. Now, you can think this is not important. In reality, it's crazy important. If you want a real deep control, a really cooperation with the model, you need to be sure there are no bias in your data. If you go 2 times from the same street, this street will be more prominent and will appear frequently during the navigation on the gun. So we spend a lot of time just to be sure in terms of technology, link the camera with the mobile phone. There was no this type of bias. Then, of course, you can see the safe city, the unsafe city was kind of analysis that we make by linking clip with this training data and the latent space from this training data. And obviously, if you just walk on downtown, in Europe at least, in Italy at least, in the United States, it's very different. In Italy, you have a very beautiful house, very beautiful neighbors, and everything looks so great. This, of course, this comes from analysis all around the world. So there are pictures from the United States. But if you just walk around the suburban, probably the aesthetic will be very different, and in some area, in some case. So it's very important to really understand that it's not just about don't walk on the same 2 times on the same street, but where are you going in Venice? Are you going where just tourists go, or you go all around Venice? So I was working with a group of urbanists to be sure to capture the spirit of the city on its whole. So really understand deeply different type of aesthetics. Then you can use a model to really extract from the model the feature that push the model to believe that the location is safe or unsafe. And you can do for any type of prompt, These are very simple, and you discover things that are not really meaningful, like you discover, we say in Italy, the hot water. So nothing, I don't know if you have the same expression, but essentially the safe area are the green part, the unsafe area are the concrete or some oil on the street or something like that. So anyway, at that time in 2020, we introduced this tool that was interactive with voice. So you was able to identify a depressing location, a romantic location, or something more specific expression of really a pink house with green windows close to the river, or a yellow house. And the system was able to, in some way, of course, was mandatory just to write prompt about the city, because the system was just able to talk and visualize the city. Then we decided to really link with poetry this system. So this is the artistic part. So the idea is let's identify poetry that talk about that city, and let's see what happened. Poetry, they're not just a regular poetry, they're poetry that talk about that city in a deep way. So we make a selection of poetry about the Italian city in collaboration with, try to guess, Harvard University, so very far away, but there is an amazing department of Italian language study. So at the end of this, a little snapshot of 1 minute about this connection between poetry and this model that is just able to build a picture of city, and with interpretation of Federica Fracassi. And just this little inside. If the model is just working 1 time for each street, and try to really capture the sense of the city, then you have a representation of the city that is impossible to recognize from a tourist point of view. The tourist will not able to recognize Venice. The tourist will not, no, Venice, yes, of course, because water everywhere, but we're not able to recognize Pisa or Florence, because, but every single citizen of that city will be able to recognize that city, because the only thing that emerge are the patterns that are more frequently visible in the training data. But the signature, the Torre di Pisa, or any type of touristic signature, they disappear, because they appear just in few pictures. They're not enough to really create a pattern to identify the city itself.
È delle città come dei sogni. Tutto l'immaginabile può essere sognato, ma anche il sogno più inatteso è un rebus che nasconde un desiderio, oppure il suo rovescio, una paura.
Como. Arrivo a Como dal mare, dopo aver attraversato orizzontali pianure, risaie, pioppeti, e Como con il suo lago, le sue alture, il suo biancore mi ridà il senso del movimento continuo e della verticalità aerea. Così mi ritrovo dalle mie parti. Il lago lo direi incastonato tra case e vette, come una spilla di diamante. Se non fosse che l'acqua sciaborda e di notte sembra volersi annettere le strade. Sembra voler diventare un mare in sogno.
You can see the sister is never able to really follow the poetry, but he tried to do his best to follow the poetry. And I think that for this reason was a kind of an artistic project, not a scientific, in a sense. The idea was complex, but I think it was the first type of artifact that we have in art that was expressed in this way with this type of capability. And then Urbana Verba from 2023, this is the title of this conference, of this talk too, and it's dedicated my last 5 minutes. So Urbana Verba really to change everything for me, because it was the first very popular project. It was exposed for 6 months in Milan airport, and then will be in exposition in Boston in City Hall, and in soon will be soon in Boston, and then in another city in Spain that we have tried to identify the location now, but so, and it's different because it's using diffusion. Now, diffusion is completely different technology compared to GAN. So I was using diffusion many years, of course, many years before, but this was really the first project that was really using this technology become popular in art stream. So essentially, the core point is to identify a vector that can, for example, reproduce picture x0, and then the vector g2 they reproduce a picture x, the other picture, and then if you move from z1 to z2, you have, of course, some type of animation. But this is the key point: how you move in a latent space. So different type of movement can create a completely different type of pan camera effect. So when you're working in a text to picture is something, but when you work in text to video, you need to understand that you need to create your tool to really navigate in a right way between a different point to create a zoom effect, to create a palm effect, to create any type of camera movement effect you're thinking about. Now, Milan Factory of the Future. So essentially, the concept is very simple: is to extract in automatic any type of book that comes from a specific city, and then use all the prompts from that book to generate a movie. So very simple, but take many months usually to really complete the process, because of course you have so many books and you have to split in so many prompts and then identify the best possible aesthetic output with every single prompt. So it's a nightmare if you do manually. It is my cooperation, but it's very easy if you do completely automatically. So the three cities are Boston, Milan, okay, Seville, I forgot before it was Seville. So Seville will be in Plaza della Seta, Plaza della Seta. If you know Seville, do you know Seville? Plaza della Seta is one of the most important places there, and in Boston will be another important location. So this type of movie about the city, of course, are dedicated to the citizen. So have to be in a big huge screen in some important location, and with audio too. So I'll give you just a little glimpse of the work. These are some picture. Oh, the screen doesn't look so big, but soon you will see that in reality is very, very big. These people are far away from the screen, very, very far away. So we can go deeply in the story of the movie, but I think the most important part is is to show the emotion that come from this experience. So let's watch this 1 minute video, and then maybe we can start the question, because it's a time. there are many chapters in this. I become one of the case study in Ars Electronica. Are you familiar with Ars Electronica? Is one, we can say, the most important event around the world in digital art. So I was presenting to different locations this year, this project last year, 2023, because become a case of a very important case of how to talk about talk with citizen. In this case, is really the targeted citizen, and in some way rediscover the city where they live, without presenting really the city, but presenting the dream, the vision that comes from the book made by the people that was living or born in that city. So completely a different approach. And of course, it was one of the famous case of using generative AI to convey in some way a form of art. Well, thank you. I think we can start with a question, and thank you so much.
You? Do we have any questions online? Let's start there first. No. Any questions in the room for Mauro? Ooh.
And it's a very nice talk. It's lovely work. I'd really like to talk about how your early work with data visualization and your current work and voids between things. So in your data visualization, you have these little areas of scientific publications, and in between enormous gaps. And I think that we could easily imagine that there's science to be done in those enormous gaps. But a model contains that information too. It contains those clusters, and it also contains, I think, those voids, only it can interpolate across. But I don't know whether or not it does it meaningfully. So I think real originality comes from moving away from the clusters of training data into unexplored regions. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I believe many other projects. One was a Compass, a project that we present in Europe, so like 4 years ago, about how to navigate in this Latin space, how to discover landscape that nobody's seen before, the more unknown area of the Latin space. So in reality, I totally agree with what you say, that the beauty could be in between these different worlds, that the dataism and generativism, and there is a lot in between. I make a lot of work in between too. And I think, obviously, I try to really be more clear as possible with these talks, so really divide the two fields to make in some way a didactic approach. No, there is a dataism, there is a generativism, but the reality is much more complex, and we have something between that is probably some of the most interesting area to explore. But nevertheless, the type of revolution that come in terms of way to work, in terms of way to think, and in terms of a vision about our future, our memory. Let's not forget our memory today are in the internet, are in our Facebook, are in our social media, in YouTube. The memory of our planet, they're in some way this huge repository. But now we are doing something different. We're replacing our memory with synthetic memory that are from nobody. So this type of a new challenge, this type of new mission, if you want, for artists, is really evident. It's really evident. So yeah, there is a lot in between. I think, this is time to stop the talk, apparently. But in reality, I think we have many other minutes about for questions. No?
Yeah.
Many. Maybe I have 10 minutes for a few other questions.
Here's another question.
Thank you for sharing your work. It's wonderful. I have a couple of questions, but I'll try to blend them into one, which is the prelude is there's this gap that exists between the speed at which you develop taste and the speed at which you develop skill. So an artist suffers that a lot. And I wondered in this new world, you talk about democratization of generation of art, but I see an interesting maybe counterfact, which is the literacy that is needed to be effective, have agency on the new medium, on the materials that are digital art and generative AI. What do you think is that the new kind of literacy artists need to have in order to be competent, in order to have the agency to control the tools, the medium, the technology, to do what they want to do with it?
But because everything moves in light speed, let's be honest, there are at least 3 papers that you miss every day that you need to read, but you miss it. It's very hard today to identify the type of expertise for an artist. because it's still very hard to identify the type of expertise for an AI expert that is working art. So everything moves too fast in this moment. So nobody can really stop and build the right tool for the artist with everything inside, because in 2 months would be obsolete. So I feel there is a speed that doesn't have any precedent. I think everybody feels the same things. So every month, a big important paper can emerge, and we are already there to write a new one and to read the other one that come from other scientists. So it's a difficult time for artists to really be part of this world. And there are very few AI artists, unfortunately, because very few people really have this skill to use this model. And what we consider today AI art for the majority of people is prompting. Today is just prompting. And obviously, there is a lot of critique from many museum and many art curator to accept an artist just because he's prompting well, because there are so many artists that are prompting very well. It's like to go to Instagram and look about picture. You can find a 12 years old girl that make amazing picture, really incredible, beautiful picture. So it becomes very hard to identify the criteria to move a person from express itself in the social media to express itself in a museum. So I think what contemporary art critique try to do is identify who is the first. Is always one of my main criteria in art, who is the first, and then identify a new artifact that you can produce with this technology. It's not just about the quality of the static. This is done. You can really push yourself and prompt how much you want. You will not become an artist in a museum. Nobody will pick you because, like in Instagram, there are million incredible photographers. So always in the museum, they go the first photographer, they make that, they use the camera in that way and so on, with some very specific type of story. So there is a lot of space for innovation, a lot of space for innovation. You can create artifacts that nobody see before every day. Of course, you need the time, you need expertise. So my suggestion is for artists that want to become AI artists, first to forget about this AI artist. Art is always is just one, and to be part of the history of art, you need to be innovative. So this means that the time for prompting to enter in the history of AI art is too late today. So I think it would be good for design to create the right type of picture that really fit with that brand and so on. But there's no more time for just by prompting enter in art field. This is my impression. We're just in the beginning. So think about the next 100 here. Of course, the prompting maybe is just the beginning. Then will be body gesture and prompting. Maybe jumping and I don't know. But yes, another question.
Second. So last question.
I have a follow-up question. Thank you. It was fascinating. And I was wondering, I have friends who are trying to become artists and they spend hours and they get so frustrated for not being able to get the nose in the right shape or the shade of the nose and etc. And for me, I knew I could never do any of that. So I didn't even try. But now I can go to an AI and just, as you say, prompt it. So the execution part is actually solved. So what does make an artist?
Yeah, the execution part of prompting is solved. There are many other ways to execute an AI experience that can be really, really good in any type of museum. So there's still space for innovation in terms of creativity of the medium. But then in terms of what makes an artist, let's not forget Duchamp. So after Duchamp, performance is no more important at all. Concept become the key point of any type of new type of artist. And so frequently the artists are not even able to make a sculpture, but they become the most famous sculpture in the planet because the concept to make a balloon, they look like a, no. So Kunz is not able to build that balloon. He needs expertise from other people. I just introduce a concept. So probably people that are not able to code can become the great AI artists in the planet soon, because they maybe can build the right team and have the right idea and execute very well in the right location and so on. So I don't think it's just question of coding at all. It's not just question of have a great idea. It's a mix between. You need to know what is possible to do with coding. You need to know, otherwise you cannot have a great idea. But you don't need to be able to code. And today, honestly, the mantra that we see in any conference is you don't need to be able to code. Nobody needs to be able to code anymore. Of course, not really today, but the trend for the future is that the real coding is our language. Our language is more sophisticated Python, but is really strong language. So of course, if you can programming in your language, you're a great philosopher, you're a great poet, you're a great scientist, you can really express complex concepts with your language, you're the best coder in the planet. But you don't need more to know Python probably in the next future. And like artists, they don't need more to really interact with AI, with Python in the next future. So IDEA today is a trend to become a great artist, I think, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I also wanted to say Mauro is going to be at the conference, I think, or you will be here on and off. So if you have more questions,
or just have a
feel
beer,
free to
obviously,
reach out to
just a
him.
beer, no question. Just
And let's just thank him again. This was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.